Episode 8 of the PFedu podcast. Today's guest is going to be Robb Hornett. I have known Robb for, it's been a while.
10 years? 10 years, I think.
10 years. We ran a little place called IU Health Sports Performance together back in the day. God, it feels like yesterday.
Yeah, it does and it doesn't.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have Robb on the podcast is whether you know it or not, you've been a huge influence on me from a mentorship side. Even though we're young and I think we're young, but
not anymore, I guess.
Even though we're about the same age, and I feel like you have challenged me a lot to keep things simple when I want to make things complex. And I know you have been in a plethora of places.
Yep. So
for those of you who don't know Robb, he's been with the military. He's been in the private setting. He's been in the NBA. And most recently, he's back in the collegiate setting where he's the director at St. Louis, working with the basketball team and many other sports. Did I leave anything out?
I don't think so. No. University of Virginia, back in college. So, yeah, started off my career. I interned with the Indiana Pacers, did that for a year and a half. Once the NBA lockout happened, they stopped ties with everybody, and they handed me all the players. So I trained all those guys. And then shortly after that, that's when we met at IU Health. We ran that I think I was there for 17 months. I think we were there for 17 months together, and then you left shortly thereafter to start Pro Force. Once there, I left and went to the military for 3 years. Had a desire to get back into basketball. Had a good opportunity to work under Mike Curtis at University of Virginia. I was there for 3 years, and then went to the Golden State Warriors for a year. And I want to get back into college basketball and working with collegiate athletics. So the opportunity to St. Louis, and this is the closest I've been to home in 10 years since I moved away from Indianapolis when we first started working together. So it was a good opportunity to get back into college, kind of run my own show and have some people underneath me that could help our vision as a university and as athletics department. So, yeah.
So I think the number one question when I talk about you, our staff, is I always get asked, why did he leave Golden State?
Yeah. And I think it's really easy for me. Like, the NBA and the lore of professional sports is, and you have professional athletes working with you, but it's all cracked up to be from our realm. You don't get that development time and get to know them as people as well as you do when you're in a collegiate setting or you have a private sector, when you have a high school athlete that's coming in 3 to 4 times a week for 4 years. That's what I missed. I miss being with student athletes and young people for 4 years and seeing them evolve from, boys to men and women and girls to women. So being with them for that 4 years, making a bigger influence on them, and I get more time with them in this time. Professional setting, you have athletes that are coming in, and you might have them for 3 hours during the week, and then they're flying out to Miami on a weekend for a long extended weekend. It's just a different world, and then their off seasons are way shorter. So, when I was with Golden State, we end our season in June, and we get right back into camp 2 months later. So that two months time for development is not the same. They don't need the same development, but it's just not the same benefit and rewarding factor for me of seeing them evolve from 4 years compared to, we have 2 months of training in a professional off season. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that speaks volumes to, with the pro guys that we work with, whether it's especially baseball, football not as much because they can still develop them a little bit, but I always get asked, can you send me a workout card because these season workouts are too easy and suck. And
yeah.
I know it's not a knock on the strength coach. I just know it's the handcuffs that are put on him, right? He can't. Yeah. He's told don't hurt the guys. He's trying to manage all the volume and stress of their season, and you just can't do as much.
No, and you can't. And then sometimes you're traveling as much as you are. That's another reason I got out. I was gone 16 to 17 days a month. I've been married now for gosh, don't let my wife see this, going on 8 years. So, and being away that much, it's tough. And when you're on the road that much, you mess up your wife's routine when you get home. Like, why are you putting the dishes away this way? Well, I'm sorry, you haven't been here for 2 weeks. Don't mess up my situation here. So it's a lot of factors that go into it, but that development time with the athletes is the big thing for me.
Yeah, I know. Greg Moore always had a great quote on that. I was always asking him why he wasn't in professional sports or collegiate. He's in collegiate now. Funny thing, I'm talking to him later today on here, but he used to tell me, well, I get to put my head on the pillow next to my wife every night.
Yeah.
That was a big deal for him. I know that's been a big deal for me as well. So
no, it's huge. And then, when we started off in our careers, especially at IU, we were talking about like, where do we want to go? What do we want to do? And all this. And it's just funny how things change as you get older and you evolve in the field, and you see young professionals in the field too. Like, I want to go to this. And I'm like, and it's so true. You have a big influence from Ron McKeefer. He's like, make the situation you're at the best situation. And it's true. And it's hard to say that as a young professional, like, I want to do this, and I see down the tunnel. I want to be in professional sport, but don't wish your time away and make the big time where you're at now. And it's so cliche, but it's so true.
Yeah, that's what I try to stress that as much as I can to our young staff. Because you know how it is, like the younger staff members, it's borrowed time. Like, they're just here until they find the next, because grass is always green on the other side. I got to get bigger. And like, well, we can make you pretty big here if you want.
Yeah.
You gotta want it, not let it be handed to you. And I know that's something you were always really good at, is finding your next opportunity and not letting it come to you. But
yeah.
So working with student athletes at the collegiate level,
Yep.
specifically basketball, right? Because we actually work with quite a few basketball players. When they come to you, what is the number one thing that you're always like, oh my God, I wish this could just be corrected before they got to me? What do you bang your head up against the ball with?
And you said it already, like the simple things. Basic general skipping, basic general movement is the biggest thing. Like, can you do 20 push-ups to my standard and how I want things done? Are your glutes turned on? Are you doing the little things right? Because if that's not done, you're not going to do the fancy stuff. And when I bring a recruit in to talk to them, every time we have recruits come in that come to my office, we sit down. I show them the plan of where we're at, where we want to be. And then I say the simple thing to them every time, like, our destination is Washington, D.C. If you want to drive to California first and go to California before we get to D.C., that's fine. You're just going to be at a way slower pace than the freshman who's doing everything right, or the transfer who's doing everything right in the process. Like, we have a standardized approach of how we do things. I want you to do simple things done savagely well. So move well often under load. So those are our order. So we have to have movement competency before we do anything else. Once you have competency, we build that with load. And then we add more load, and then we get into fun training as you're second and third year in the program. But it's basic movement patterns that come in. I have a kid coming in this year who's 6'9", who can squat ass to grass, do everything right, but he just doesn't have the tolerance yet. He hasn't had enough load on his body and repetitions of his body. And I have another kid who's just the opposite, who's stiff as a board. We need to work on different things. So I think our assessment, I'm saying similar, you probably do an assessment as well. I'm knowing you do an assessment. So our assessment dictates what we're going to do. There's not one, a square peg into a round hole. It's whatever we see for that individual. But I would just say from a broad spectrum, it's movement quality is our biggest driver for our first year athletes coming in.
Are you still teaching that skip yoga?
Yeah, basic skips patterns. Yeah, so Greg Cook, I got that for my time at UVA when you came and visited me, and that's basic human movement that I think is key. I just had a transfer from Oregon come in and couldn't do a basic skipping pattern. It's just like, and they feel stupid, but you know what? You should feel stupid because you've lost these patterns that everybody should be able to do. So.
Yeah, I'll never forget it when you had me down there and took me through the warm-up, and I thought I was really good at skipping. And then you made me do that stupid skip-yoka.
Yeah.
And I had to go back to the hotel room that night, watch videos on it, and practice in my hotel room to get it the next day because it was so far outside the realm of what I had ever done.
Yeah.
That drove me nuts. And to this day, I'm still – if I want to throw a wrench in the warm-up, I'll look at the kids and I'll be like, hey, we're going to skip yoga forward, backwards. I'll demo it. And you should see their brains just explode.
Oh, it's so funny. It's so
What did
funny.
you just do?
Yeah.
But that comes from you, and they have you to thank for that. Because
It's funny to see every time we'll have our interns do it, and I'm just like, yeah, you better practice this, because if you don't look good doing this, it's going to be hard to sell to your athletes. So
yeah. So what are you doing? Because with our basketball players, a lot it's hard to get around the mobility issues at the ankle.
yeah,
Because they're so bad.
yeah.
What have you found that works for you guys in teaching your squat progressions or your deadlift?
Yeah. So from that standpoint, this obviously number one, assessment is going to dictate everything we do with our athletes. So head to toe, where they're at. So passive and active range of motion is going to dictate what we do. After we've done that, based on we don't see any limiting factors from that standpoint, we're going to put them into our progression regression model. So they're going to start with a counterbalance squat, and we've done an FMS, and we've done other things as well to this, but we have an idea going after our assessment and our FMS and our other assessment tools, what we're going to need. But I still put them in there and see what they do naturally and how they self-organize when they go into a counterbalance squat. So counterbalance squat is arms out, parallel to the ground, thumbs facing up, into a 3-count eccentric, 2-count isometric, and back up. And then I'm just kind of assessing from there. I can tell from the assessment if someone's going to need, a heel lift or some sort of a counterbalance or a kettlebell to change their center of gravity. From there, we're going to assess and see if they need a lifting shoe or a heel raise, and that's what we're going to do. And it's pretty simple. Now, if we have somebody on the table who lacks internal external rotation in the hip and in a hip flexion position, and same thing in a prone and supine position, it's going to kind of dictate some things. So if we don't think somebody has the range to get down and deep into a squat because of lack of hip internal external rotation, then we're going to make them a deadlifter. We're going to raise the floor to them, and they're going to limit their range. And there might be people that will bash me on this, but I'm not going to, same thing, put a square peg into a round hole. So when you get here on campus, you're going to be either a front squatter or a deadlifter. And that's it. And those are our two primary things. So those are our primary lower body exercises. For pushes, I consider a trap bar deadlift a push, kind of a hybrid. Some people do different things, but that's going to kind of dictate what you are, and that's what you're going to live in with me for the foreseeable future. Everybody does Olympic derivatives, but when it comes down to lower body push or pull exercises, it's going to be a deadlift or a squat.
That's exactly what we'll do. So you're in one of the other camps. We'll use the assessment to figure out if you're going to be a deadlifter versus if you're going to be a squatter. And we'll do the same thing. We'll move the bar up to them, because why am I going to wrench somebody's low back just to fit them in the, like you said, try to fit them in the hole? And I think that's important. I think a lot of people would try to, well, we're going to deadlift them or we're going to squat them, and it makes no sense. What are you guys looking at as far as what is considered tight hip range of motion for you guys? Because I know for us, what we're looking for is like a full range of at least 80 degrees, internal, external.
In a hip flexion position?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the same. And then I'm just looking for asymmetries from that standpoint. And then we'll do like a hip scouring on top of that. Not a medical professional when it comes to that, but when we're doing hip scouring, I'm looking for anything from that standpoint. Any abnormalities in the hip. And then that's going to kind of dictate it. And then we'll do a table Thomas too, just check hip flexor, and psoas lengthening and stuff like that. So,
yeah. Will you do any PRI stuff with the lower half?
So it depends. When I was at Golden State, the director there, Mike Erb, very well versed in PRI. I got a lot from him, a lot of breathing principles, but from a group standpoint, no. And then from an individual standpoint, yes, I'll do some variations with my smaller teams and guys who are, like I said, on the right way to Washington, D.C., not going to California. So if you're buying into the process and doing things, I kind of use PRI and breathing principles as more like I say at hippie granola. I bought into it, but a first-year athlete who doesn't know their ass from their foot, I'm not going to teach them advanced stuff like that. So once they're through the kind of the rabbit hole a little bit, they bought into the process, they know what we're doing from that standpoint, then I'll start throwing those little bit of sprinkles on from like a PRI standpoint, stuff like that.
No, that's good. I just didn't know. Like we'll do on top of what you talked about. Like any high school athlete will like drop test and race test just to see where they're at.
Yeah,
and I've seen a big difference in hip mobility with that. As far as like getting vertical jump increases.
Yeah.
Right. What has been your marker of, okay, let's get here and then we should be able to see vertical jump increases? Are you noticing some correlation? Like, is it 1.5 times body weight on a certain lift, or is it just whether they're a hip loader versus knee loader? Is that making a difference in how you're training them, or is it stiffness quality? I mean, have you seen anything?
So when we go down the rabbit hole again, assessment's going to dictate everything. And then same thing when we go from a strength profile to a tissue type profile to like a plyometric profile, same thing. They're all encompassing, right? So we do assessment as soon as they get in on campus, and then we'll do it right before summer's end. So a typical year. So student athletes get here middle of June. I'll have them all the way until about August 12th. So I'll get about 8 weeks with them from a training perspective. First week, we do assessments, testing, everything. Baseline testing, go through. 8 weeks, we'll do our testing again. I don't test them again until after the season. Give them a 2-week break right after the season. Test, off-season training. We go home in about May 10th, test that week. And from that standpoint, what I'm seeing from a testing standpoint is overall strength. Basketball players come in, they don't have any weight training previous to coming in. So we're seeing it every year. We're seeing constant improvement. But what are we seeing from that standpoint is just keep simple things done savagely well. Progressive overload first year, strength second year, and then we're going into whatever the athlete needs. These guys are elite jumpers by the time they come in to SLU. We have a guy tested last year at 45.5, which broke the combine approach jump vertical. I don't have to do anything crazy from a plyometric, a strength perspective to get these guys to make gains. It's just like coming into your facility, kids come in, they get stronger just because they're doing things consistently, which these guys have never had. We're getting into more of a profiling standpoint this off season, going into this next season with some force plate technology, but not down that rabbit hole yet.
Okay.
So
interesting. I'll be curious to see what you find with the force plate data.
I will, but it's also just going to be a baseline data for our athletes too, to see where they're at coming back from it once an injury happens. Like,
oh, that's good.
What we see from that standpoint, cool, but what are we going to get them back to when something bad does happen, that we can return to them to where they were previous to injury?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Are you still running the freshmen through like 1x20, or what's your progression on that?
Yeah, so it's not really a 1x20. It depends on, like, this year I did a 1x20 just because of where we were. I did it for our returners coming back. So we were in Brooklyn, New York on March 15th or 16th. And that was the epicenter of COVID. We flew home, and I didn't see the athletes again until June 26th is when we returned for outside training. I would love to say that the athletes did training, but they probably didn't. So all returners did a 1x20 for about 3 to 4 weeks. I let them pick their weights. I actually self-selected their weights very, very lightly the first 2 weeks, and then let them self-select for the next 2 weeks. And then we came back into the weight room because we're allowed back inside, and we're back into a general prep with a little higher volumes than I normally would have. So that's returners. And then freshmen came back right when I came back in. So from that approach, it's really like a 3x12 approach with every exercise, just building that progressive overload. And then once they show me requisite, competency and movement and mobility and strength, then we start adding more load. So it's simple things over and over again.
That's why I brought that up before we even got into this, because
yeah,
you've always been keep it simple.
Yeah.
So, So I know it's simple,
Mm-hmm.
But over their kind of long-term athletic development with you, over the course of 3 to 4
Yeah.
years or whatever it may be, what are you looking for markers of success to help them, like, okay, they're ready to go to the next level? Whether it's from the evaluation, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's on the court play, is there something that you would say? Because I know, like, when I've talked to like the Louisville strength staff, they have like different criteria that they want them to meet, and then they decide if they're in like gold, silver, bronze. Um, and I didn't know if you had anything like that.
Yeah, and this is the big thing too. My predecessor here and Coach Ford, our men's basketball coach, lets me do whatever I want and has full faith in what I've done. His previous strength coaches were, hey, I want you to bench press this much. I want you to squat this much. I don't give two, what about weight room numbers. And I hate saying it comes down to an eye test, but one, are you strong enough? Like, have you filled that reserve? If you're squatting pretty heavy and the weight is moving fast, I'm gonna be happy. But I have different standards for each individual. Like I go off the combine numbers. Can I share my screen? My screen. Let's see.
Let me see if I can.
No, I cannot. But so I'll just talk. I'm going through.
You should be able to now. I'm gonna change.
Right.
Well, if I do that, that'll cancel the recording. We can't do that.
Okay, never mind then.
Okay.
But so I'll have the combine numbers for our athletes, and I just use it as a norm standpoint. I don't care about 185 bench press for basketball players. I don't care about this, but I just want to make sure that you're fitting within the norm of a high level draft pick for your position. So if I'm pulling up like vertical numbers for each position, an average guard in the NBA has a 37.75 approach jump vertical. I don't care. I just want you to be in the norm. I'm not expecting you to break records, but I want you to have a comparable stat with those athletes when it comes to combine numbers. It's nothing I push. It's not like we have a combine day. It's just showing so you can compare yourself to where pros are. From a basketball standpoint, are you putting up the numbers that are going to make you even close to being talked about coming in for a draft workout? And then from a weight room standpoint, do you move well? Do you move well off and do you move well off and under load? So if you are a deadlifter, you should probably be hitting 160, 140, 160 kilos for reps would be my guess. Every one of my guys in the upperclassmen, I don't know, probably will front squat over 100 kilos first, 8 to 10 reps if I made them. We have guys that are doing 140 kilos for front squat that weigh 185 pounds, and they're getting depth. Bench press is not a big factor for me in basketball. It's not a football sport where you're driving out. Sure, I want you to have upper body strength, but it's not the same. A pull-up is more a big thing for me. Can you do 10 body weight pull-ups sound with a dead stop? Can you control your torso when you do a pull-up? Those are the big things that drive for me. Can you push a lot of lower body with good technique? And can you do 10 body weight pull-ups very, very easily? So, yeah, it's pretty boring.
Hey, but the thing is, boring works. It's just far too often we get caught up in what the sexiness of stuff is.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always loved you. Like, you just ground. You come back to the ground every single time with what's tried and true instead of, I mean, shit, we've been in this long enough. How many times have you already seen the pendulum go back and forth?
Oh, absolutely. And it's the same thing too. Like, yeah, we do a lot of other stuff. It's not like we just bench squat and power lift and Olympic lifting. Like, we do all that, but we also do surf the curve. In season, we stay 80 to 95% of our percentages all season long, depending on opponent. Sometimes we'll ride the curve a little bit. We're going into like conference tournament. I'll drop percentages to 80 to 55. We'll do some like high velocity peaking phases, high force, high velocity stuff. But for the main part of our competitive season, we're 80 to 95% if you're a main time player for us. If you're not playing, you're in a developmental group and you're doing a whole bunch of different stuff. But in that competitive season, you're 80 to 95% of your 1RM all year on your core lifts.
Love that. Now, you mentioned a lot of velocity type stuff and moving the bar fast. You guys will use bar speed velocity, correct?
I'm getting away from it a little bit. We do it, but I'm getting away from it actually a lot.
You're the one that sold me on push. Come on.
I know. I still like it. And I think it's a good selling point for athletes, and I think it's nice that it has all encompassing. But I'm starting to get away from it a little bit. I haven't used it as much as I was going to. I think it's a little easier in your setting than it is ours when we have 4 per rack sometimes. But even with the new update, I think it's better. But I've kind of gotten away from it and just try to have them have their own intent on the bar a little bit. Don't let push know that, but yeah.
It's okay. I don't know if they probably don't follow this podcast. I think there's one person in like Italy that watches. I think that's our only person. No, man, that makes I mean, I understand why you're doing that. If you're getting away from it, if you're 4 deep in the rack, I mean, I know the way you wanted to use it was like record everything through.
Yeah, I wanted to get solid reps on everything so I can know that we can get total tonnage for a training session.
That would be a pain.
Oh yeah.
I mean, for us, it's basically we just turn it on bar mode. We select the speed we want them to be at, and then they just crank out the reps, making sure we're hitting that speed. We just use the select weight for the lift, and that's how we use it.
No, I like it, and I think it's good. But sometimes I'm kind of getting away from it a little bit. But it's just me right now. Same thing. I'll probably come back to the pendulum.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I'm not judging.
I'm in a different stage right now. We're hitting higher volumes than we've ever hit, just because I know we haven't had the time under the bar. So I'm hitting higher volumes than we ever have, and I don't really need a bar speed for a 10 rep.
We've been talking like high German volume here? Or?
No. I'm saying for a basketball player that has elite athleticism, me hitting 10s is something unheard of. But I've increased the volume on them way more than I ever have before, just because we didn't have that springtime with them this year. So,
last thing I'm going to ask you, and you probably remember me talking about it way back in the day, maybe not because it's been so long. But how do you deal with the basketball player who's never lifted? They believe lifting is going to mess your shot up. It sounds like you have the backing of your head coach, which is great, because at South Florida I did not. They would just miss the lift, and I had to deal with it. Because I had a lot of those guys at South Florida that were like, yeah, I'm not going to lift. It's going to mess my shot up. We got to scrimmage the next day. I'd be like, why is it going to mess your shot up? Well, I'm going to get stronger, and it's going to mess up my trajectory. Okay, whatever. They've just never lifted before, so they don't really understand it. What have you done from that side to help kind of ease that?
Yeah, from that standpoint, I really don't have to deal with that. I'll give you both scenarios here. So the scenario I'm in, my coach is bought into the weight room. I probably wouldn't have came here if he was not bought into sport performance in that realm. As a GA at South Florida, it's a little different than being a director at a university. But I kind of picked my situation and wanted to go to a place that, thought the weight room and sports performance was key to success long term. So that was an easy sell. One, the style of play we play is probably one of the most aggressive. Last year, we had one lineup that was under, our tallest player was 6'5", and we were top 10 in the country in rebounding. So we play an aggressive – that's not me. It's good recruiting and good athletes. But we play an aggressive style. And being aggressive, being strong is who we are. And if you look who we are on a basketball team, that's what we do. And then I come from a different situation where I was at Golden State, and you see Steph Curry and Kevin Durant would lift KD would lift every game day. So we'd have shoot around in the morning. Right after shoot around, he'd come in, and he was a trap bar deadlifter. He would trap bar deadlift every game day. So sure, he might not be the physical specimen from a weight room standpoint, but he's one of the best basketball players of all time. And he values it and knows what it does for his career. So you see those the two best players in the world doing that on a daily basis. It's an easy sell to your students, your student athletes, or your customers. But it's not going to mess your shot up. And you tell me somebody who hasn't evolved their body as a pro, like Giannis for Milwaukee. Like you see somebody who comes in as an 18-year-old, no muscle, to who he is now and was an MVP last year. It's a pretty easy selling point. And these kids now are on Instagram, social media, and just scroll through, you'll see an NBA player working out and training. So I don't think if you want to play long term and you want to have a successful career, you better get in the weight room.
Absolutely. No, you nailed it. All right, man. Well, thank you for
That's
your
it.
time.
Yeah. All right. If you need anything else, let me know. And yeah, happy to be on. Thanks for having me.